everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Lexi, and today, as I'm sure you've already guessed from the title, today's video is inspired by Miss Taylor Swift. Recently, I've been loving to watch all of the Evermore and Folklore book tags that have been going around, and with the news that we are getting a re-released version of Fearless, I thought it might be fun to start a Fearless book tag. Now, I'm not sure if this has already been done. There is a lot of just Taylor Swift book tags in general floating around, but I thought it would be really fun to look at the 13 tracks on the album and match them up with 13 different books. So I've got a list here of what I want to talk about. I've grabbed out all the books, and basically I just either chose it based on the title or based on something that resonated with me in that book and in that song. So without further ado, we might as well just jump straight into it. Track number 1 is Fearless, so for that I've gone with the book on the come up. I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about this a few times. I absolutely love this book. I chose this for Fearless because the main character, Bree, is just honestly so fearless in her quest to become who she is. She has a dad who was a rapper and she wants to follow in his footsteps, but she's got a lot of barriers stopping her to that, and she does her absolute best to just overcome them and follow her dreams, and it's a really, really heartwarming story. As I say every time I talk about this book, I still have to read The Hate U Give. It's on my shelf up there, like I do own it. I just have not read it yet, and I will get there. Also, my new shelves are meant to be arriving today, hopefully, so in my next video it should look a bit more complete in the background. The next track on the album is 15, and for that I chose the book Sadie. Now, I can't remember exactly how old Sadie and her sister are. I think it's around 15, 16. But I just remember when I read this, it was just such a different story for like that young age group. It was very impactful, and it dealt with a lot of really trigger warning and sensitive topics that I think young people do need to read about, just to make themselves more aware that it does actually happen and it's not just something you see on TV or on the news. Basically, Sadie's little sister Maddie is killed, and she goes on a hunt to figure out what happened to her and bring justice to her sister. A lot of people say the audiobook for this is really good. I obviously read the physical book, but I definitely would recommend it in either form if you're thinking about reading it. The next song on the album is Love Story, obviously pretty much everyone's favorite, with that video clip just being inspired by Romeo and Juliet and the lyrics of the song. Of course, I had to go with These Violent Delights by Gong. I actually have the Fairy Loot edition, that's why it's pink and it's got the pink sprayed edges. It's literally stunning. I love this book so much. And it is inspired by Romeo and Juliet, but it is based in 1920s Shanghai. So I absolutely love that it's such a different spin. The characters are really lovable, and it's just got a great overall vibe. Track number 4 is Hey Stephen, and that's actually one of my favorite songs on the album. This album came out when I was in year 7 in high school, and I just remember listening to it on repeat. For that one, I've gone with One of Us is Lying by M McManus. Now, this might seem a bit weird, but hear me out. The theme of Hey Stephen is pretty much that. This girl is so in love with him, even though he loves other girls, but Taylor Swift is the best option for him. It's kind of another take on You Belong With Me. And one of the characters in this book is just so broken and damaged by not being seen by their fellow classmates or their friends and their love interests. And that's why the book sort of takes such a sour turn. So the premise of this book is that 5 kids are in detention, one of them dies in detention, and who is the killer, or what has happened? What's caused this person to die in detention? It's a really interesting story, and I found it really unpredictable. And it deals with a lot of like the high school stresses of friendships, relationships, grades, keeping up appearances, identity. So I guess that combined with me relating these songs to high school sort of made me put the two together, especially when, yeah, it's about being seen by the person that you want to be seen by, and that's a really important theme in the plot of this book. The next song I want to talk about is White Horse. And the book I've chosen to go with that is My Dark Vanessa. The song is basically saying that this person in their life wants to just always sweep in at the last minute and save them and swoop them off their feet, but but it's not necessarily the healthiest relationship or the best relationship. And I think that really resonates with the plot of My Dark Vanessa. It's very heavy. This one isn't even YA, this is just adult. It's pretty much about a young girl going through her life from I think 15 to about like in her late 30s, and she was actually groomed by a girl and has a relationship with a so it's very triggering. It's got a lot of sensitive topics, but it deals with the subject matter so well, and it really does open your eyes to the role of victims, the role of perpetrators, and how identity and all that gets mixed in. But it definitely is an important book, and if you're in the right headspace, I would recommend reading it. The next song is You Belong With Me, and for that I've gone with A Court of Thorns and Roses and the rest of the series. If you've read that series, you would probably see the link that I'm making between the two. If not, read this one, read the next one, and then you'll probably get it. But this is such a talked about book on Bookstagram and Booktube, so I figured everyone probably knows. The next song is Breathe, and for that I've gone with I Would Leave Me If I Could by Halsey. This is a collection of poems. I thought that this went really well with the track Breathe, because Breathe is all about feeling as though you can't live without someone, but then persevering and pushing through it. And that is something that Halsey talks about a lot in her songs as well. And I feel like she would probably bring the same kind of vibes to the poetry. It'll talk a lot about love lessons, just because that's what she talks about in her music, and that's how she heals and how we can heal as well. I've also got the Barnes & Noble exclusive, so it does have a few extra chapters, which I'm super pumped about. And the artwork on the cover is just stunning, which Halsey painted herself as well. Interesting fact. The next track is Tell Me Why, and for that I've gone with The Wicked King by Holly Black. If you've read it, you'll probably get the dots, but if you haven't, read The Cruel Prince, read this, and then come back to me. But also just like Tell Me Why, I felt like went with the cliffhanger of this. Like, I finished this book and I was like, why? In saying that though, this is one of my favorite series. It follows a mortal who goes into the fairy world and then pretty much just it up and wants to, you know, make things better for her and her sister. Our main character Jude is just such a badass, and she's really cool. I love the world building, and you honestly just feel so sucked into the fairy world. The next track is You're Not Sorry, and for that I've gone with The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. Again, I'm pretty sure everyone that's read this would agree that Snow is not sorry. We kind of hoped to see him be a little bit more humane than he is in the Hunger Games, and he is to a degree, but he's also just such a terrible villain, but a villain that we all love to hate, I think, after reading this book. Basically, this is a prequel to the Hunger Games, so we see President Snow as a young boy, and it also tells us a lot about how the Hunger Games was started and how it became what it was, because once you read this book, you understand that what we see in the Hunger Games like 50 years later, 40 years later, it's actually super different to how it initially started. And even though this book received a lot of criticism, I did really love it and would definitely read it again when the time is right. The next track is The Way I Loved You, and for that I've gone with The Astonishing Color of After. I chose this book because it sort of looks at a few different types of relationships and a few different types of love, and I thought that really connected with the song title. The premise of this book is that a girl's mother commits suicide and she needs to grieve that and move forward, and it follows her journey in doing so. She is also a high school student, so she does have a lot of other things going on as well, which we see, and I thought this was a super beautiful book that dealt with a lot of triggering topics very well. The next track is Forever and Always, and I've had to go with a book that I don't actually have on me, that I don't own, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It was definitely in my top 3 books last year. I absolutely loved it. That again is pretty self-explanatory. Forever and always, Addie lives for 300 years and we follow her along that journey. She can never be remembered by anyone. As soon as she meets someone and then they look away or leave the room, they forget exactly who she is. And it goes on like that until she meets a guy in a bookstore. And how does he remember her? Why does he remember her? What makes him so different? What makes this situation special? That is what we find out as we read. The second last track on the album is The Best Day, And for that I kind of struggled because obviously in books and YA there's not really many best days. Honestly, these characters are going through it. But I decided to go with My True Love Gave to Me, which is a collection of short stories from all different YA authors. And because they are short stories, a lot of them take place in like one day or a couple of days. And yeah, a lot of them have really sweet endings. So I thought that was probably the most appropriate for this track. I got this just after Christmas last year, so I've only read I think 2 or 3 stories. As you can see, it's got a lot of really popular authors as well. So hoping they will all turn out to be pretty good. The final track on the album is Change, and I personally really love that song. It's just so upbeat and yeah, it's just empowering. Love that song. And the book that I've gone with for that is Shadow and Bone, and I just recently read this, so I'm still obsessed with it. I'm hoping to get book 2 and 3 from my local library in the next week or so. This book follows a girl who finds out that she's got these crazy magical powers, and she goes on a journey to discover them, but also discover the change that she can bring about to the world that she's living in. The world is really dystopian-esque, like there's a lot of bad things happening, and she's now in this position of whether she can help bring about change or she can bring about a worse change, a good change or a bad change. So I'm definitely looking forward to finding out more in the second and third book. So that's all the books and songs that I've got to talk about today. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you saw where I was coming from with my connections. If you do this tag or any of the other Taylor Swift tags, please let me know. I would love to check out your videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around. Please give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Bye!